Welcome to the Candidate Forum put on by the League of Women Voters Arlington Heights. My name is Louisa Zanin, a junior at Prospect High School. I am from the League of Women Voters Arlington Heights, Mount Prospect, Buffalo Grove area, and I am also a member of our Emerging Leaders program. If you use closed captioning, please turn it on via live transcript at the bottom of your screen next to the raised hands. Founded in 1920 out of the suffragette movement giving women the right to vote, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that neither supports nor opposes candidates or parties for any office. The League's purpose is to promote political responsibility through the informed and active participation of citizens in the government. Providing this forum allows citizens to become better informed about issues facing their community and to become better acquainted with the candidates running for office. We are happy to provide this service to our community. To send in questions for the candidates, please text the number 224-306-9521 or email forum.lwvah@gmail.com. All of the candidates were contacted by email or phone prior to today. The candidates have agreed to abide by the ground rules provided by the League of Women Voters. They are as follows. Our moderator has drawn names for speaking order and will rotate this order during the forum for questions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for their introduction. Next, each candidate will have 1 minute to answer questions. At the end, each candidate will have a 2-minute closing. League members will act as timers. Candidates will be given a 30-second and 15-second warning, so we ask the candidates to quickly complete their thoughts before they see a stop card. Time limits will be enforced out of respect to all candidates. Questions will be provided by the audience. Each question will be answered by all candidates, so please, audience, only ask questions related to the office being sought. Again, we only use questions which can be answered by all candidates. Please send questions to 224-306-9521 or email forum.lwvah@gmail.com. Questions will be reviewed by League volunteers for clarity, appropriateness, and to avoid duplication. Candidates have been asked to not interrupt one another. The moderator will repeat a question if asked. The candidates are to speak to the audience. I'd like to introduce our moderator for today's event, Maya Kusalovich, a junior at Prospect High School and one of our emerging leaders.
Thank you. We will now start our candidate forum. We ask that you bear with us and note that technology is what it is, and we are all working to ensure this event runs as smoothly as possible. With me on screen, we have our candidates and our timer, League member Vicky Chang. I would like to note that the Q&A chat has been disabled for all attendees. So if you would like to submit a question for the candidates, please text this number, 224-306-9521, or email forum.lwvah@gmail.com. We will start this forum with candidate O'Sullivan, candidate for the Mount Prospect Library trustee. Candidates, please notice the timer. When you see the stop sign, you may finish your sentence. The candidates will be in the following order for our 2-minute opening statements: Candidate O'Sullivan, Candidate Bass, and Candidate Grunwald. Candidate O'Sullivan, please begin your 2-minute opening statement.
Great, thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum and for their community engagement. And thank you to everyone who is spending their Sunday becoming better acquainted with the candidates so they can make an informed choice on April 6th. I am reflective of what's currently happening in Mount Prospect. My family chose to move here in 2015 because of the schools and the community. We're patrons of the library and we enjoy both children's and adult programming. We check out materials and we love the friendly, respectful atmosphere of the library. My professional background of 20 years has focused on community building and member engagement. First, as an AmeriCorps Vista member, where I coordinated literacy programs for a rural school district in New Hampshire, and then in professional associations, where I've been in management positions for the last 15 years in membership and in communications. I've worked with vendors, boards, and volunteers, and have managed departmental budgets of over $300,000, as well as helped draft and execute strategic plans. But mostly, I'm passionate about building community and the role that the library has in our village. The pandemic has been devastating to our patrons. We have the opportunity to help them with access to materials, resources, and programming that can make a real difference in their lives. I've been serving on the board for the past 6 months, and in that time, I've been learning how to best impact our community and lead with positive change. I've been attending the Illinois Library Association workshops to get up to speed, and I'm committed to being a well-informed and strategic board member. We have a lot of opportunities and a lot of work to do. But our strategic goals of working on diversity and inclusion, our marketing and our branding, and our community outreach make this an exciting time at the Mount Prospect Public Library. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we have Candidate Bass.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you who are participating in the forum, and also thanks to the League of Women Voters. I am Marie Bass. I currently serve as a library trustee on the Mount Prospect Library Board of Trustees. And I have been a Mount Prospect resident for 21 years. I am involved in a number of Mount Prospect organizations and some in a leadership role. I'm married and I have 3 children, and my daughter actually lives in Mount Prospect with her family as well. In terms of a brief background, I started my career in healthcare as a clinical hematologist at the University of Chicago. And then I moved into association work and served as the executive director for 3 medical associations. I do have a good deal of board experience. I have served on both not-for-profit and corporate boards. And I have experience developing and managing 2 large budgets of up to $10 million. And as well, I was responsible for the work of large staff teams. I've recently retired and was interested in becoming a trustee before I joined the board, of course, and educated myself on library services through the American Library Association and the Illinois Library Association, even before I served on the board. And why do I want to continue to be a trustee? I am a lifelong learner, interested in providing the same opportunity for others. I'm passionate about the work that we do, and I'm really excited to further enhance the services at the library.
Thank you. Candidate Grunwald. Oh, you are muted.
So sorry about that. So I'm Rosemary Grunwald. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. My husband and I have lived in Mount Prospect for 43 years. Raising our family here has afforded me the opportunity to become intimately familiar with the community in so many ways. But I've also worked at the Mount Prospect Public Library for over 33 years, and I am so passionate about our excellent library and all the wonderful services it provides to our community. I've worked from within the library to help it grow into the library it is today, and to help build the services, the programs, and the collections that the library offers our resident. I'm a very vocal library advocate, committed to promoting all of the services that library staff have worked so tirelessly to implement and offer. I'll be retired at the time of the election, and my retirement offers me the opportunity to continue my connection with the library, albeit in a different role as a library board trustee. As a librarian with a master's degree in library science, I have much to offer in terms of my extensive knowledge of librarianship and library services, and sharing this information in the role of a library board trustee will supplement and strengthen the board's effectiveness and can only make our organization even better. My 33-year involvement as a librarian has provided me with a breadth of knowledge and experience about issues facing libraries today and the nationwide trends in library services that are directly applicable to our library that no candidate currently serving on the library board possesses. I'll bring an important and unique perspective to the library board that's currently missing. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates, for your opening statement. We will now move on to the question portion. We will start with candidate Bass, and the question is, our library has done great work pivoting to an online model and offering curbside pickup for library materials. In what ways do you think we can expand this model, especially to provide more services for children during this time? Candidate Bass?
Oh, that's a great question. And honestly, there have been, not that I want to say there's been benefits to the pandemic, but we've learned a lot about how to make access to services easier for residents. And of course, parking lot pickup has been so popular. We also have home delivery. We have made things easier by reducing fees for library services, overdue fees, that is. And we're going to be working on expanding access with the use of lockers that participants can pick up materials after hours. So lots more to continue to do, both live as we move on from the pandemic and remotely as we learn from some of the things that we've been doing over the last year.
Thank you. Candidate Grunwald?
Thank you. As Marie mentioned, we are going to be putting lockers in down in the underground garage so that there's 24/7 pickup for patrons of materials. I'd also like to see us explore putting lockers throughout the community so that people don't even need to come to the physical space of the mortars and bricks of our library to get our materials. Another thing that we've been promoting and working towards as far as youth services is ways to bring our programs out into the community. During the pandemic, we offered some story walks at area parks so that families could walk along the trail, and instead of a story time, it was a story walk. And not only was there a staff person there, but there was also information like storyboards about the particular, say, picture book. There are lots of pop-up. Is my time up? Sorry.
Yes, sorry.
I didn't see it. I'm sorry. That's good. I was at a
No
good
problem.
stopping point. Thank you. Sorry.
Next, we have candidate O'Sullivan.
Great. Yeah, and as the other two candidates mentioned, I think the library staff has been really creative and really helpful to so many patrons. I love the pickup locker idea. I think it's fantastic that people can drive up and get things in their trunk, or they can have things delivered to their homes, especially Chromebooks with with hotspots. I would like to see more pop-up activities throughout the village. I think we can partner with the parks, and there's plenty of space at Randhurst that maybe we could take over a storefront and have activities for children. But I would like to see a focus on catching kids up. I think that we've lost a lot this last year. I think that socially and academically, kids are going to need a lot more fun, invigorating, and together activities where they can, work on getting their skills back up to speed and, getting back into the classroom and meeting other kids their age.
Thank you, candidates. Just as a reminder to viewers, please text your questions to 224-306-9521. Our next question will start with candidate Grunwald, and it asks, during the past year, anti-racist work and activism dominated our book lists and discussions. What efforts would you take to ensure our library continues to keep this discussion ongoing? I'll make sure to unmute.
Thanks. Great question. Included as a service response to the current Mount Prospect Public Library strategic plan is the goal to identify and implement equity, diversity, and inclusion opportunities to increase the respect, the knowledge, and the understanding in these areas. So library staff are currently working towards addressing this issue in a variety of ways. The library board trustees have supported and advocated for this, and they should continue to advocate for any future efforts. There's many components involved in our efforts. A major one is to make sure that our staff is diverse and it reflects the diverse community that we serve. We also want to be sure that our collections are diverse and represent either authors of color, different gender perspectives, LGBT authors, and we have been doing a purposeful job on that in the last few years.
Thank you. Candidate O'Sullivan.
Right. Rosemary just made some really great points. I would add to that, the board diversity is an issue that I'm really interested in. I don't think we can accurately represent our community unless we are reflective of the composition of race and immigrants that are in our community. So I'd like to examine that. And I'd also like to coordinate with some community groups such as Breathe that are already doing these community chats. I think that the library is a natural place for people to go to learn from one another and to communicate and to connect over important issues that need to be discussed and need to influence change in our community. So I would like to coordinate with people who are doing a great job doing that. I'd like to have more author readings and community chats, whether that's in person or over Zoom, so that people can learn from one another and continue this important work.
Thank you. Candidate Bass.
Kudos, great answers from both Christine and Rosemary. And, we've had an EDI policy for a while, but just recently, there's just been so much of a focus around those important issues. And, our past EDI issue, while it was good, it needed to be enhanced. And we need to make sure that our current EDI activities they're actually able to help us make substantive changes in this area. And so related to our collections, our programming, our staff training, our composition of our staff and board, and also providing resources for the community. So thanks for the question.
Thank you, candidates. The next question will start with candidate O'Sullivan, and it reads as follows. The pandemic has raised awareness around the incredible need to protect and support staff in public service and frontline roles, while balancing services for communities in need. What sort of things would you do to keep staff safe during the current and potentially future pandemics while balancing the need for services? Candidate O'Sullivan?
That's a great question. I know that I wasn't on the board when it happened. I know that some staff had been furloughed at the beginning of the pandemic. And I think that moving forward, there was a lot to learn from this. I hope that we don't have to take these lessons and move, and apply them in future scenarios. But I think it's really important to look back and do an evaluation of what went right and what could have been different. What have other libraries done to ensure that their staff was protected, both physically in the space from the virus, but also their jobs and their livelihoods were also protected. So I think that this was a great learning opportunity, one that no one wanted to go through. But I would be really interested in seeing how other libraries, what their responses were, and moving forward have a policy, like a crisis management policy of, the appropriate steps to ensure that all stakeholders are protected.
Thank you. Next, we have candidate Bass.
Great question. And I have been on the board for a while. And of course, we've been living this now for, the past year. I will say that the safety of our residents, patrons, and staff has been of premier importance. Anybody that has a business or deals with the public knows what a big issue it was to keep staff safe and patrons safe. And one of the things that's actually been a bit of a challenge is our rules. So we followed the CDC guidelines, the governor's guidelines, and we have limited capacity in the library. We do require masks, and there are patrons that come without masks, and we have to help them in other ways. We're happy to do the home delivery and remote services, but they may not enter the library. So it's been a dedicated concern for us all along. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have candidate Grunwald.
I think we have learned a lot from the pandemic, but I think we did a fabulous job of protecting staff and then patrons. We implemented so many different things. We have plexiglass shields as a barrier. There was a real concern about patrons being able to access computers that really needed. And this was when the library was closed. And so we actually decided to implement a computer appointment, and they were put in a room, a training room by themselves. So there was no really staff and patron interaction. So both were safe as far as COVID, but they had access to call the research desk. And that was very well received by patrons, because there are many patrons that really needed our computer access. So going forward, like Christine said, I think we do need, we already have an emergency plan, but we never, never mind. Thank you.
Thank you. For the next question, we will be starting with candidate Bass, and the question reads as follows. The library conducted a staff salary study and capped salaries. Do you feel this is the right step? And if not, what would you have done? Candidate Bass?
Great question. I do feel it was the right step. As library trustees, we are stewards of the financial health of the library. And as such, sometimes we need to make sure that we are meeting national standards. So the salary survey helped us determine salary ranges, and based on both national networking and also local ranges. And I can tell you, having worked in a number of organizations, for profit and corporate, there are standard salary ranges, and that's what we need to do to maintain our fiscal responsibility with our library resources.
Thank you. Next, we have candidate Grunwald.
We have had a salary structure in place for many years, but it was definitely time to revisit it and look at it again. While I agree with Marie that the board needs to be very fiscally responsible and look at the salary line as it relates to the entire budget, I do feel that this new salary structure does not value staff longevity. there are reasons why some staff are making a good salary, but it's because they have contributed so much to their efforts to build our library and to the really great library it is today. And so I think those things need to be looked at in addition to just the bottom line salary.
Thank you. Next, we have candidate O'Sullivan.
Thanks. You know, we want to right size the budget. Obviously, we want to find that sweet spot between the amount of money that is spent on resources and materials versus our admin and our staff. And I know that the board wants to, and I believe slowly, you know, get that the two balanced. And I think that showing salary transparency is actually a really good business practice, no matter your organization. You know, studies have shown that when staff understand the payment band that they're in and what they can expect and what their colleagues earn, that having that transparency really helps strengthen the organization so that people understand their career paths and what they should be paid and what they're being paid. And I think that as transparent as possible with salary and right sizing the budget is the right step to go.
Can I just add as one of my rebuttals, I guess, please?
Of course. 30
Okay.
seconds.
Okay, thank you. The one thing I did forget to mention is that we can't lose sight of the fact, the board, that our staff is our most valuable resource. We are constantly lauded by our community at the excellent patron service and customer service that we give to our community. And I just don't think that we should lose sight of that resource. Thanks.
I actually have an additional comment as well.
Sure, 30-second rebuttal.
Okay. You know, in reviewing our benchmarks against national standards, our staff line is above the national standards in terms of a percentage of our budget. And we also want to ensure that we're able to provide the resources. So when you have a set budget, you have X amount of dollars for staff and X amount of dollars for resources. So if you're over on that ratio for staff, thank you.
All right, thank you, candidates. I would just like to remind the viewers to please send in questions at 224-306-9521 or to email at forum.lwvah@gmail.com. Thank you. Please send in questions. Next, we'll start with candidate Grunwald, and the question reads as follows. The library conducted, How do you feel about the news that some Dr. Seuss books will no longer be published? Should the titles be pulled from our library shelves? Candidate Grunwald.
I think it goes hand in hand with the whole equity, diversity, and inclusion thing that's happening, you know, nationwide. We can't even get our hands on the books because they're all checked out to actually physically, the youth staff to physically go through them. So they're waiting to do that. But, you know, that's a hard call because historically, you don't want to remove everything that has historical value in your books. But on the other hand, you don't want to have any disparaging references to different members of the community, diverse populations. So that's a hard call. I'm glad I'm not a youth staff, let's put it that way. They are much more able to respond to that.
Thank you, candidate. Next, we have candidate O'Sullivan.
Thank you. I mean, this is a cultural conversation that's happening now. I know that Disney Plus now has, you know, a disclaimer before some of their classic movies that, you know, say that times change and standards change. And that's what's great about libraries is that they're reflective communities. And when our standards change, then, you know, the materials that we choose to have on the shelves can change as well. You know, Dr. Seuss is, you know, an American icon, you know, so in a lot of ways, letting parents decide if Dr. Seuss is appropriate for their family is a great first step. I don't believe in removing art, and the accessibility of art because people disagree with it. But at the same time, having conversations about why our standards have changed, why that's offensive, and how children should be, what they should be learning and accessing the materials that they're looking at. Those need to change because our standards have changed. So it is a really tricky situation. I'm not for banning books, but I'm okay. Thank you.
All right, next we have candidate Bass.
And as the other two candidates have mentioned, it's a hard call. Who gets to decide what should be taken from the shelves and what shouldn't be? And, we are careful to steer clear of the issue of censorship. And we also follow some of the guidelines from the American Library Association. They have a couple of policies in place. I know one is, I believe, the right to read. And it's typically the stance that libraries are not allowed to censor the materials unless they're, it's really objectionable, and then they would. But we really like to provide the materials to make it available to residents and let parents or individuals decide what they don't want to read or what they don't want to use.
Thank you, candidates. Just as a reminder, please send in your questions at 224-306-9521. For the next question, we'll be starting with candidate O'Sullivan, and it reads as follows. What do you like most about our library, and what do you like the least? Candidate O'Sullivan?
Well, that's an interesting question. What I like best, what I love about our library actually, is that it's such a community of respect and kindness. The staff is amazing. They are so helpful. And even our website, like it has like little gems tucked in there of when you need to know, who actually represents me in Congress, and not just, nationally, but statewide, and how can I get a hold of them? You could spend a lot of time Googling it, but the staff at the library has made sure that there's all this information that's accessible. And I think that they just take so much pride in their work, and you can see that. I love that. To say what I don't like about our library is, the pandemic has really, I miss the library. I miss the library book sales. I miss the programming. And so, I can't wait to go back to normal, but I also hope that we can expand some of our online opportunities for programming and community chats and more conversations with one another.
Thank you. Candidate Bass?
This is a tough question, but I would say, like Christine, I love the staff. And actually, when we get compliments about the library, it's always related to the staff. I love the resources that we have available to us. And I do love the programming. I think the program is really getting better and better. I guess the things I don't like are when I have to wait for a book that's super popular and I'm, number 12 on the list. Although our wait times are decreasing because we've invested in some additional resources. And also, sometimes I take out a new book and there's a short due date on it and it's not able to be renewed because somebody else wants it. So if I get busy and I don't have time to read it, I'd like to have it a longer time. So those are just some of the things we deal with for the reality of library loaning.
Thank you. Next, we have candidate Grunwald.
As Marie and Christine said, I think the thing I love about our library is our staff and our staff commitment to making our library like the shining jewel of the Northwest suburbs. They are very committed to providing excellent patron service. And as I said earlier, they are our best resource. That said, we have many other resources. There's so many things to information to disseminate to our patrons at some side. So difficult to get it all out there in a manner that patrons can discover. But I know that staff is constantly working towards that. I think the thing that I like the least, particularly right now in the pandemic, is that there's not that many people in the library. I mean, it used to be such a hustling and bustling place. And we've always talked about our library being one of the things is just a meeting place.
Thank you, candidates. Just as a reminder, please send in questions at 224-306-9521. For our next question, we have, and we will be starting with candidate Bass. Librarians are increasingly tasked with additional community support and services, approaching the level of social work instead of information services. How would you ensure staff are not overworked by this kind of mission, while ensuring community members in need can access these resources? Candidate Bass?
You know, the beauty of our library is that we have a close link with Mount Prospect Community Services because our South Branch shares space with Mount Prospect Community Services. And so, and we are not trained, or I should say the staff are not trained to be social workers. It's not their role. But they do have resources available, and they know where to send patrons for the kind of resources that they need. We have a lot of materials in the library that can help, but when it comes to sort of social services or social work type activities, they would be referred to the appropriate area within the village.
Thank you. Next, we have candidate Grunwald.
Can you repeat the question again, please?
Of course. So it asks, librarians are increasingly tasked with additional community support and services, approaching the level of social work instead of information services. How would you ensure staff are not overworked by this kind of mission while ensuring community members in need can access these resources?
Okay, I would reiterate what Marie said, but then there's also, we have in the past, there's been a real need for, particular during the recession, help in how to navigate online, like job applications and stuff. So at that point, staff did have to become more involved with not so much social work issues, but just helping patrons with being overwhelmed at having to apply online when having no computer skills whatsoever. So, and our staff is very well trained on how to do this. But that's kind of like it borders into at some point sometimes social work, but not really the social work as it's really defined.
Thank you.
I don't know if that makes sense, but.
All good. Next, we have candidate O'Sullivan.
Yeah, I definitely agree that library staff, they don't need to be experts in everything, certainly not in helping people find, social services. There are Mount Prospect groups that can help them do that through the village. But I think that the library has a great opportunity, to be that place of connection for people. I would like to see programming that's either in person or like a recorded program from a caseworker, a social worker who explains, what websites to visit, through the county, through the state, how to apply for, assistance, how to apply for a job. I think that having a library of recordings of that kind of nature could be really helpful. It's something to direct everyone to. So really partnering and doing community outreach is important. And I know that some libraries received, small grants through pandemic relief to hire people who know these things and connect others. So, that's an avenue to look at as well if there's a real need.
Thank you. We will now move on to our next question, and the first speaker will be candidate Grunwald. It reads as follows. As the library building ages, are there proactive steps that the board is taking to ensure the building remains serviceable? If not, what would you put forth as a trustee? Candidate Grunwald?
Yes, our building is 2003, so I can't necessarily do the math, but over to almost 20 years old. And yes, we actually just did a facility audit. I don't know if that's the right word. And a third-party consultant was hired to do this and to look at all the different pieces of what goes into facility management, and to give us like a timeline and also a kind of a estimate as to the costs involved. So like, for example, an HVAC needs to have something updated or upgraded to be sure that you are providing the best heat, air, filtering, etc., that the library should provide. Yeah, that.
Thank you, Candidate Grunwald. Next, we have Candidate O'Sullivan.
Great. Yeah, I know that this is definitely on the radar of the board. And this goes back to the conversation about right sizing the budget. You know, you have to save for improvements and repairs. I think that we've been doing a pretty good job of monitoring that. You know, the building is in good shape. And so I don't foresee anything in the near future, but like any building, you know, things need to be replaced, things need to be repaired. So it really is about strategic budgeting.
Thank you, Candidate O'Sullivan. Next, we have Candidate Bass.
Yes, actually, we are proud of the fact that the board funded this audit for a building audit this year, despite everything else that was going on. And it was the first time ever that we've had a building assessment and maintenance study. And through that, we found that there were some issues that if we made corrections now, it would avoid costly repairs in the future. So again, being stewards of the financial health of the library, this was an important undertaking for us, and we're happy to have done that this year.
Thank you, candidates. Just as a reminder, please send in your questions at 224-306-9521. For this next question, Candidate O'Sullivan will be speaking first, and it reads as follows. If elected, what one single initiative would you most want to see enacted? Candidate O'Sullivan?
I want to say that I think that the best step forward is to really focus on completing a branding and marketing assessment, just so that we are sure that we are explaining and promoting and drawing in patrons with the amazing programming and materials and resources that we have. You can spend a lot of time and money putting programs into place, but it really requires people to hear in a few different ways what is being offered. And so that is a strategic goal of 2021 for the library board. And I know that staff is looking for vendors, and it's going to be a nice rollout. And I'm excited to see that we are investing in thoughtful marketing and branding for all the services, so that everyone in the community does know what we're doing and why they should be coming to the library.
Thank you. Next, we have Candidate Bass.
And I agree with Christine. The library has so many services and resources, and honestly, until I got to be a trustee, I was unaware of many of them. And so it's important for us to learn how to communicate in modern ways through social media and so forth. But I think my overarching goal is a little bit more nebulous, and that is, how do we increase access to our services? How do we have a bigger percentage of Mount Prospect residents using the library? How do we loan out more materials and allow participants to access more online programs? And how do we make ourselves more relevant with programs and resources, and do so with a quick, easy access way of getting that? Maya, I think you're muted.
Oh, thank you. Next, we have Candidate Grunwald.
That is a really hard question for me. I guess I would like to, tag on to what Marie said, just about making our library relevant, continue to make it relevant. We have reinvented ourselves so many times over, the last 30 plus years that I have been there. And just to always keep abreast of the community demands and the types of services they're looking for. For example, years ago, we had to add lots of computer stations for the public because there was such a huge demand. Then, even though we had built quite a few study rooms in our new facility, all of a sudden we didn't have enough. And so we added, I think, about 11 other study rooms. And that actually is something, now that I think of it, that I would like to see us pursue. Because again, before the pandemic, the requests for study rooms, we couldn't even keep up with them. And I believe we have 20. Thanks.
Thank you, candidates. We will now be starting our closing statements, which are 2 minutes long. And we will be starting with candidate Bass.
Okay, great. Well, I have to say, I've been honored to serve as on the Mount Prospect Board of Trustees, Library Board of Trustees. And we have accomplished quite a lot in the last year. First of all, our board is committed to a strong fiscal responsibility on behalf of the residents of Mount Prospect. Our 2021 budget was a flat budget, meaning that we had a 0% increase in our levy request to the village this year. We compared, and as mentioned, we've compared our library to national benchmarks in terms of staffing, patron activity, and expense. We completed the compensation study this year. We completed the building assessment and the maintenance study. We've launched some new user-friendly services that we're proud of, including parking lot pickup, home delivery, auto renewals on loans. We removed overdue fees. And as mentioned, also we will have lockers available for after-hour pickup. We reviewed the strategic plan, but based on the changed circumstances this year, and that's an understatement, I think, we developed new goals for 2021. And later this year, we will be initiating another strategic planning initiative that will include community input. And all of these accomplishments in the last year took place while addressing pandemic issues. So it's been a busy year. And honestly, there's so much more to do. And I'm so excited about the potential for our library, and I hope to continue to serve as a library trustee.
Thank you. Next, we have candidate Grunwald.
I just want to make sure yes, I am not muted. Okay. Marie, Christine, and I are all really passionate about our library. So what makes me a better fit to serve on the library board than either of them? I feel it's the breadth and the depth of my knowledge and experience regarding both library board responsibilities as well as day-to-day library operations that I have been familiar with for the last 33 years. And this has really positioned me particularly well to serve as a library board trustee. As both a longtime library employee and a resident for over 40 years, I'm extremely knowledgeable about the community the library serves. I'm familiar with how our residents use our library, the additional services they'd like to see offer, and how the library can go about serving residents who are not taking advantage of our library services and collections. I bring a unique perspective that I feel is not represented on the current board. While the current trustees understand at a general level the fundamentals of library service, as a librarian, I know firsthand how library services at our library have developed and grown and how they continue to evolve to meet the current and future needs of the library. I feel like I have a far better understanding of the efforts of the director and the staff to build upon our current library services while looking to add new library services that the community has asked for, but importantly, what's required in order to implement them. As a trustee, I will encourage the library to continue to innovate and focus on ways to stay relevant to our community. It also goes without saying that I'll work to ensure that our tax dollars continue to be spent as wisely and prudently as they always have. We have a well-run, top-notch library, and I'll do everything I can to keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have candidate O'Sullivan.
Great. I'm really proud to serve on the Mount Prospect Public Library Board. I've only been on the board for 6 months. I'm currently filling a vacancy, and I'm really grateful for the guidance and the mentorship that I've received from the other board members, including candidate Bass. This election is for a 6-year term. It's a big commitment and one that I'm ready for. I will keep all members of the Mount Prospect community at the forefront when setting budget and strategically planning programs and services. We have a huge opportunity and responsibility to help our community during and after the pandemic. The staff has been very dedicated to finding creative solutions to support our patrons. Being able to check out via parking lot pickup, a laptop with a Wi-Fi hotspot could be literally life-changing for someone who has lost their job. Being able to log into a book club over Zoom, especially if you're homebound or you choose to be homebound during the pandemic, can make a huge difference to someone who's feeling isolated. And as we enter what I hope is the recovery period of the pandemic, I want the library to be the place where our community can come to learn, discuss, and grow together. I think people had hopes that the internet and social media would be where people were able to have conversations and learn from differing viewpoints. But we know that this has actually only further divided us. I think that libraries have the opportunity and the obligation to bring community together for learning, conversations, instruction, skills building, and a chance to really understand one another's viewpoints. I'm proud of what the library offers the Mount Prospect community, and I'm proud to serve on the board. My skills in marketing, communications, and community engagement are strong assets for the Mount Prospect Public Library Board, and I'm ready to dedicate my 6-year term to enacting strategic change and community-focused programs and services. I ask for you to please vote on April 6th, and thank you for your support.
Thank you, candidates, and thank you for everyone attending our candidate forum. I would now like to return to our MC, Louisa.
Thank you, Maya, for being our moderator. Please make sure to vote. Make your plan to vote, and then make sure your voice is counted this election day. Need help? League of Women Voters, Arlington Heights, Mount Prospect, Buffalo Grove, and the Arlington Heights Memorial Library are here to help. Check out our website at www.lwvah.org for voter registration information. Yes, you can register online, mail-in vote information, planning your ballot, as well as your early and day of polling locations. You can find, again, check us out at www.lwvah.org and follow us on social media at Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. We even have accounts specifically for youth at student.lwvah and mascot pause4votes. Make sure once you're ready to vote, you tell 10 friends where they can find all the information they need to be counted. www.lwvah.org. We are grateful to you all for joining us and to our candidates, Marie Bass, Christine O'Sullivan, and Rosemary Grunwald. Our democracy relies on citizens willing to run for office. Thank you to all our volunteers of our league who have worked tirelessly to bring you this free program. Have a great day.
And thank you for hosting us.